And we are live. So, first of all, let me welcome everyone to this live lecture, which will be held by Professor Ole Kristian Dahl. For those of you who are watching this live on Facebook, let me briefly explain how this lecture will be performed. In the Zoom meeting you are about to watch, there are students, graduates, and teachers from the Music Academy in Poznan, together with our guest, Professor Ole Kristian Dahl. The main topic for today's lecture is how to get the most out of your practicing when time is limited. A topic which I believe we all will find useful considering our stressful daily lives. If you at home got any questions related to this topic or any other bassoon related question for that matter, then please feel free to write your questions in the live chat here on Facebook, and we might include them at the very end of the lecture. I can actually see that there are more and more people starting to watch the stream already, which is great. So I think it's actually a good time to start the lecture. So Ole, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you for this, fun and invitation to do this. I think many of us are going through the same kind of phase in this Corona times. Some people have enormous amounts of time on their hands. Some people have no time on their hands. It's difficult to structure what you want to do in the day. And, for many of my students, we've had a new problem now that, they can't go to the school to practice, and they would have to use their apartments, and that can be relying on neighbors and all kinds of rules, although in Germany the rules are very clear of how much you're actually allowed to practice, which is substantial. But if the neighbors are making a big fuss, it can be quite difficult. So for a lot of the students, only 1 hour of practice is available per day. And this is a bit of a nightmare if you're in the middle of, bachelor, master's, Zusatzstudium, looking for a job, trying to get the job. What do you do? So we're trying very hard to sort of max this out. The actual hour in itself has to be very cleverly sort of divided. The brain tells you, you need to do this, you need to do that, but you need to be inspired, you need to have a goal, you need to do all these things. And many things gets in the way of the practicing. Social media, for sure, phones, all these different things. I think we really, really have to try and use that hour rather, which is kind of ironic since we're on social media right now, but we have to use that hour in a very sort of meditative manner and trying to get as much as things sorted in our practicing as we can. So the most difficult thing about this is having focus on what it is that you want to do. Why is it so difficult? Because we don't know how things are going anywhere in the world right now. And the motivation of then, keeping running in the hamster wheel can be somewhat difficult. But I can only try to inspire you to say that, it's actually a really, really wonderful thing for the mind, for the body to have the ability to play and actually perform a physical task like this and include arts for the brain. So I think one should use this time in Corona times to listen to a lot of music, go back in time, listen to old recordings, listen to old artists, not necessarily only the people who gets the most likes these days. I think art should flow, and we should listen to it as much as possible. Go into the other genres that you don't know so well. All of these things gives you more brain food for creating, your own colors or your own ideas in the music. So it's a fantastic time to meditate about reeds, get to know your material. That doesn't necessarily disturb your neighbors so much, hopefully. But when it then boils down to the practicing itself, I personally like to sort of separate it into 3 very, very different stages. The first stage is, maintaining and developing your skills is very, very important. So what I would do if I have this hour ready, say the slot is between 11 and 12, The neighbor is ready with his shotgun in case you would play one peep across 1201. Then what I would like to do in the morning, have a good breakfast, and I would like to work out a little bit and just get the body warm while listening to music. Love doing that. Shuffle is amazing. Some crazy shuffles lately. Stevie Ray 1 into Bruckner 8. That was very bizarre, but you know, adds a little bit. So be warm and ready when you want to play. First thing I would do, I would take the bassoon. I would play Glissandos, half step and whole step, all the way from the lowest note, half step, whole step. Why? To find the closest combination possible for those two notes. I do that chromatically through the whole register, all the way up to the snow. Then that reed goes away. I take the next reed that I need to play on and sort of, you know, make a little route of this. I usually have 10, 20 reeds in rotation all the time. So these are reeds that needs to sort of be broken, needs to be broken in. Next reed, then I would do a Clark pattern. And why would I do a Clark pattern? Trumpet exercise, cornet exercise. It's great for portioning out air and phrasing and starting to sort of warm your support up a little bit. The Clark pattern can also be done from the lowest notes all the way through. I'm sure you know it. French people, Spanish people, they do. I can't do that, but it's very impressive when they sing it in the lessons all the time. So then very slowly, and the focus should then vary. You do beginning, low B flat. Of course, you can't do the turn in the end of that. You play the first note. You take your tongue down to make the note a little richer and flatter. Then you support up to pitch. And then you close the side muscles. This is basically the dig out exercise. Close or focus embouchure. And then you feel the embouchure and then you push through. And that is, you know, the beginning of starting to phrase a little bit like that. Next note, be natural. Play the note with the tuner, of course. Lower your tongue, or preferably lower here. You can change the temperature between cold and warm. You see that easily here. Thank God it's not after Christmas, because then you can't see it. But now you can. So you change the vowel here a little bit to make the inner cavity a little bigger. But then the cavity, of course, the note is flabby and big. So you support to get the pitch up, and then you focus the embouchure again. So in this sense, all these little things, you upgrade the inner room a little bit for the sound, you support, then you start rolling with this. Play the Clark through, again, the whole register. Then that reed goes away. Then you have, in your notebook, you say, okay, what's the tonality of the day? And then I see, okay, today is a C major day. Well, in Sweden, it really isn't, because it's pretty gray. So it would be more like a maybe A flat major day, I think. And the mail came also a little late. So maybe A flat major. But we go into the book and we see what is the tonality that I'm doing for the day. And then, of course, I would use the drill 1 from the system, practicing system, saying, okay, time to work and get that little stone in. Yeah. We're talking already now. We spent Glissando exercise, couple of minutes, Clark, you know, thoroughly through 10 minutes. And then we can actually do this part of work of the hour is very, very important for your endurance, that you build chops, that you are stronger. And it also gives you, you know, putting one brick in the wall for your development over time. Drill 1 is great for that. It's tedious and it's heavy. Your reed should be playable, of course, that you can have some, careful that you don't play 2 fresh reeds in the tenor register. You do that usually just once or twice, and then you find out maybe that's not such a good idea. So you try to have reeds that are at least, or you can go a little bit through the reeds for each octave even. That could be possible if you have more reeds that you need to break in. Then I would go through that system. Very important, it's not too fast. Legato, tenuto, staccato, and you play through this whole system. do a nice bit of stretch, and then it would be very, very natural after the drill one, just to focus a little bit on the tonality, some thirds, some broken chords in this. And then very, very important is now we're basically halfway through the hour at least. Then you focus on the fact you need to do some attacks, drill 3, soft attacks. You develop the sound, decrescendo, decrescendo, crescendo. So you're working on the tonic of the day in that sense. So in this way, okay, you're working into this. Now we're really getting a little closer to saying, okay, you've warmed up the system. You've done a lot of these different kind of exercises. You're halfway through the day. What else do you need? Well, it very important is for me that you take that tonality that you've actually worked on, the C, and that you start painting the notes around with it to get high level of homogeneity, which is very, c'est la mode, as you say. It's very modern these days to have a very even, smooth sound that goes between all registers. Kind of sad in one way that we lose a little bit of the character from the different registers so much, which I think a lot of composers actually deliberately used. You know, you have Dance Suite from Bartok, all the nasty notes after each other, just to have, you know, really gritty and bassoon sound. Price of Spring, of course, then, you know, things were related to the register a little bit. But nevertheless, again, without having it end up in the hamster wheel, we would like to get a job. The market says, okay, a smooth and even sound between the registers is very important these days. So the flex exercise you take then from the drills is also what you paint the surrounding notes with. It's also a great exercise to get the blood flowing in the embouchure a little bit between the intervals, and also that you time your slurs very easily, both on the way up and the way down. And after that, basically, you've gone through, you've had some touch, you've had some technique. You can choose then within the hour either to do a coffee scales pattern that we do in Mannheim, which goes through the tonalities, or you can take scales and chords milde, one of the scales and chords with matching there. So you get into what we call bridging mode. You've been now in the beginning of the hour in the academic mode all the time, working on laboratory work, you know, how to do this, how to do that. Now we're slowly going into the world of playing, which is so important. Of course, that's why we play. So, you know, we have the bridging stage is playing a study or the coffee scales, where you focus, you have one foot in the academics, that you are in control of what you're doing, and the other foot is in the phrase of the music and looking a little bit ahead, and you plan your route. And the smoother the ride, the better, of course. It's not a virtuosity, this. It's, you know, bridging academics and creativity. Then the last part of the hour must be devoted to playing. You must play, to play. Piece of your choice, something that you would love to do, something you improvise, something you do. But the component of practicing is so important, that you have the extreme focus. Okay, I'm not good at this, or I need to develop this. All right, I can balance that, this side and that side. And the third side, I can play, or I can try to play. So that motivational balance within an hour of practice, if that is what you're doing on the day, is extremely important. There is a lot to be said about practicing without the instrument. Practice with the brain. It's one of the things many students have heard me say in their individual language. I try to learn that. There are some good ones. Because so much work we're doing could happen actually prior to the instrument. The way you prepare, the way you work with the instrument, the way you take care of the instrument, the way you work with the reeds and everything. So if you only have that hour that you can actually produce sound because of your neighbors, it is important, like I said with the reeds, that you actually have this rotation, that once we get out of this mess, that you know exactly what your reed family is doing, and see, okay, these reeds are ready for this, these reeds are ready for that. I've had the pleasure and I would say gift that I could actually play a concert last week, which I felt very divided about, because of course I'm very happy to be able to play in the concert hall again and play a concert, but I also felt very sorry for everybody who couldn't. So it was not a very celebratory thing to do. I felt great about, okay, wow, this is what we're doing, and hopefully it will come back. But my goodness, everybody's sitting at home not being able to do this. So it was sad, but being a teacher as I am, I also used very effectively. And so, okay, what is it that I lost, or what is it that I can't really do the way I want to, all of a sudden having to play a concert? And what is very, very typical is when you're practicing in solitude like we do now, is that you're not integrating your sound with anybody else. So it's very important that you know that the sound is rich enough to have this binding effect of other instruments. And that was definitely like a dig out thing again, to have the sound be rich enough that other instruments can sort of go into it. It's also very clear when you play orchestra that you're playing much more dynamics that you would do at home. It forces you to play dynamics. So it's very important to do your attack exercises and your flex things on high dynamic tension, but loud, also soft, and actually keep the span. But the most interesting thing was the activity of phrasing goes away when you're practicing on your own. So, and that's the most joyful thing, is actually, you know, making air into a 3D pattern, and like this, that the air actually flows between the notes and it becomes a phrase like that. And that's definitely the difference between something static practicing wise and something being alive and performed like that. But that's a huge thing. A very good friend of mine asked me, is there any kind of exercise you can do that will equal orchestra playing? I wish, but I haven't found it yet. I think it's playing in orchestra gives you an incredible advantage, fitness-wise, sound-wise, because your sound magnet, it draws like magnets other components from other people's sound into your own playing. And when we're playing only on our own, it gets dry, it's focused, but it doesn't have that sort of body around it that is so important. So for the sake of practicing, keeping your skills, doing your drills in this way, of course, I'm a strong advocate for that. And the Mannheim class, of course, they're doing it, and a lot of my former students are still also doing it. It's a great way of staying in shape and developing shape, because you can actually measure it from day to day a little bit. The steps are very small, but you're walking, you're moving ahead, you're doing something, and it's part of a bigger plan in that sense. And in this time where you have to bridge time like this, it is incredibly important to have routine and to have something that actually keeps your day powered a little bit like this. So we made a Corona tree. Actually, it was my daughter, bless her, for making such a nice Corona tree with roots. And they had big fat roots on one side that were for drills. And they had big fat roots in the middle. They were for Milde and bridge mode, which would be Milde studies or coffee scales, stuff like that. And big fat roots on the other side, there were reeds. And every little slot of this was an hour work. The tree itself is balanced on these three sort of segments of roots. And there were a lot of leaves on the tree. And every leaf was a piece of music that you should know or should listen to. And it's been really nice to see how motivating it's been for the studio also in Mannheim to have this tree to actually be number one on the tree. And basically also, of course, the motivation lies that there will be a bottle of champagne and 4 toilet rolls for the winner of the tree. Of course, in these days, that's the currency that everybody wants, you know, champagne and toilet rolls these days. But it's been really good to keep the motivation and structure of the students practicing going, especially when they've only had this little hour, many of them. And I would really advise people to make their own tree in this way, saying, okay, this is my Corona tree. I've done this. These are, you know, pieces of music that I really should know. I participate in the tree. And the biggest leaf so far was listening through Götterdämmerung while driving in Germany. That's a long song. And I did something really stupid. I wanted it to finish a little early, so I was driving too fast. I got a ticket in Germany. But yeah, it didn't make the song go faster. But on the other side, the balance between practicing academics, making your material fit your needs, and spending a lot of time thinking about reads, how this could be, how can I develop this, what is it that I need, and then when you actually do practice, that you practice with such a purpose and such a focus. So this morning we had a lovely session with Bosnan Bassoon class from Arek and from Christian, and we spent a good hour just on Clark, changing the focus and how you can actually alternate the modes with your brain. Okay, focusing on fingers going up, focusing on fingers going down, playing the major third as a major third in the combination, do it with the flow, or all these different things. It's repetitive practicing these kind of things, but if you change the focus, yeah, it's a whole new thing. So of course everybody goes through different phases in the corona times like this, but the motivational side of knowing we are so many people in the same boat trying to keep on rowing and going for the hope of playing music again, publicly and together with somebody, it's gonna happen. It will take some time possibly, but in the meantime we can actually use this time to really work on the things that we didn't have time to do before. Most difficult for the students is the end motivation and the limitation of time. But we have to create our own goals, and this time nobody's going to do it for us. So the teacher can be motivational, and say, practice this, you will get better. But if the student said, yeah, but for what? Then of course the emphasis and the whole energy from the teacher making this balloon castle of hope, one has to do it on your own, and that has a lot to do with discipline and actually powering through. And I think there will be difficult times in life no matter what, and this is a difficult time, absolutely, but we have the chance of actually doing something that is work related, that also can be very pleasure related in this way. So I want all of my students to have a very clear corona plan of what it is that we need to work on and what it is that we should achieve. And then hopefully very soon there can be individual lessons again. But in the meantime, there is so much information out there. There is so much fantastic music to listen to. This was a very important thing from the tree. Not only did the students have to write what they listened to, but also which recording was it, who conducted, what was it. Just, share. This is fantastic. I love this. We had a whole session with the Mannheim students also talking about how are you coping? How are you doing? What kind of music gets you going? What's the difficulty thing in this situation? What do you find easy? I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, okay, some people said, yeah, well, learned a lot of new recipes, making much more reads than ever. Having time to think about things is different. So time is a very, very exclusive thing. For me, most exclusive thing I have is time. I never have enough time for anything. So for me, having this also says, okay, wow, one can really do these things when you have time to do this. And you can really dig into it and try to learn people to enjoy things that are accessible like this. And I mean, the resource of music and art, look at these museums these days. They're fantastic. They're giving their own, you can walk through the famous museums with these incredibly well-educated, enthusiastic people talking about the arts. Amazing. Amazing. What a source of inspiration. Yeah. So I think we just have to make the most out of this. And like we did this morning, practicing together, the feeling of actually that your sound bounces off something else, okay, it goes through the internet and stuff like that. But In this way, you're playing together with somebody. It makes you feel less alone. And I think the isolation in this time is bad. It's difficult. So the more of these kind of social events one can do, and the more one can practice together, the easier it is, I think. That's a lot of talking.
But very
So
inspiring.
some questions from you guys.
Well, first of all, I would say it was a great, yeah, really great to hear you say all that. And I think you're completely right. During this Corona time, it's really easy to get unmotivated, uninspired. But at the same time, when well, in the past, when we lived in normal times, let's say, we always were complaining about, oh, I don't have time for this, I don't have time
Yeah.
for that. I wish I would have time to just sit down and finally focus on this or that. And now you do.
Yeah.
So why do you find it unmotivating? You finally have time to do those things. So
That's the thing. I think the big issue there is, of course, back in the day, one didn't have time, but things were happening, and there was some kind of end result to it. And the scary thing is now we don't know the end of this fermata. We're still in the middle of it, and it's just hard to see. Okay, are we going to get out of the fermata at some point? Will there be jobs? Will there be auditions? Yes, I'm absolutely sure they will be there. But it's difficult for humans to tackle this kind of uncertainty of time. And that's why the motivation can go out, and there could be binge watching of shows, endless. Why would I need to practice now? I can practice next week. But I thoroughly, thoroughly believe in discipline, also on a very sort of mental stage. Do something, and do something with your day. It makes you sleep better. It really does, because I mean. Well, you don't have to feel, successful, only eating green beans and working out for 3 hours and playing high notes on F sharps, in the fourth register, and then, doing a thesis on astrophysics on top of it. No, not like that, because it's a fantastic term, sort of Corona times overachievers, and everybody's trying very hard. Uh, it can be too much of that for sure too, but find your system. Find your system that you want to do. Find what works for your day, and be this, and show that kind of discipline to your own system. And then, when Friday night comes, you did a good week of work. Have some wine, cook some nice food, see a show because you didn't see one all week. Yeah, or portion it out a little bit. Reward yourself with something that makes sense. But yeah, for me, I've had my weeks for the second week in a row now. We have not been eating out once. I've been cooking for 2 weeks. They are still alive. Very challenging, I can tell you. Yeah,
impressive.
very challenging. They're not happy with my cooking at all. But, I need to improve. So, again, now you have time. And then you look into it and see, okay, what's this? So,
Exactly.
we have to make the most out of it for sure. Yeah.
But regarding this, of course, yeah, as you say, we have to make the most out of it, and at the same time, life is going on. So that is some of our jobs. Maybe not orchestra currently that much, but teaching does. And thanks to Zoom app and stuff like this, we are continuing to teach. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on actually teaching online over Zoom when it comes to not actually being in the same room as the person and the sound difficulties it comes with and stuff like this? What do you do? What do you think about this stuff?
Well, to be honest, if we didn't need the human interaction, if we didn't need the actual sound in real life, I mean, then Philips would have put us out of work, both as orchestra players, long time ago with the introduction of the CD. Why would you need to go to concert if you can hear a perfect CD? Well, it's not like that. We know the classical industry is still needed because people need the real experience, the actual physical feel of sound, of emotion, all these things that you can't really measure are still needed. And it's a bit the same. A virtual hug is very different than a real hug. I mean, hard to know these days now. It's been such a long time since anybody has had a hug. You see people making these weird gestures on the street, and you think, what's going on? But it's a bit this way. Also with the online teaching, of course, you can achieve things, you can talk about things, you can structure things, but you're not actually hearing the actual sound. You don't actually hear the output of energy. It's not, our microphones are not good enough for that yet. Thank God, in many ways. Yeah. So it has purpose, but it's not, it doesn't take away the need of proper lesson in the same room, actually hearing the sound and actually interacting with the person. There's a lot to be said about that. I mean, body language, Ausstrahlung, as you say in German, which is a really nice word. What kind of energy do you beam? What do you explain when you're playing? I mean, all of those things are related to music in that sense. And it's very difficult to sort of get all those details just from a screen. It really isn't the same thing. So I think it is a medium for the difficult times and for clearing up some things and for, giving information, sure. But we do need the real proper lessons as soon as possible. The students are missing them quite a lot. And so do I. I mean, it's very different interacting like that.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. So if you don't mind, I think there are many people here now on the screen who have some questions. Are you ready for some?
Sure. Well, if anybody wants a cooking recipe, I'm not going to give it.
That's too secret, of course. So maybe we can just start with Mateusz. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. You were talking a little bit about reeds, but I have a question about intonation and fresh reeds. How good it has to be that you can start drilling with it?
Great question, Mateusz. It is a little bit, when you have this sort of snake box with the rotation of the reeds, the really, really fresh ones, you cut them open, and then you can maybe do the glissando exercise or low register Clark, low register drill 1. But of course, really fat and juicy reeds are the tendency a little flat. And then, when they sort of, you play on them a little bit, they get a little stiffer, a little harder, and then the pitch goes a little up like that. So it is very important that you when they're really fresh, that you do suffer through with those beginning stages with the reeds, but then just stay down in the submarine area of the instrument. There's no fun playing in the middle register, or tenor register is an absolute no-go with the fresh. Then you blow your embouchure apart, before you even get to the fun part. So be wise, and then finding, okay, it just needs to be a little bit more played in, and then you can play it in that register, and then you can play in this register. But I love the idea of the rotation. It's a bit like family business. You have to have, babies, grandpas, but then the circle of life. One shouldn't say that in Corona times, but of course that's in a reed-related world, it's still a fair picture.
But a little bit later, you can play for the whole register, but it's still not 4/4/2 on the.
No. And that's a little bit, again, also the focus from what do you focus on the glissando exercise? Is that to be perfect in tune? No, it's actually the motion of the glissando between the fingers, in that sense. It's a great way of sort of just dipping reed and see how they are, and a little bit like that. And then I would go back, if I go to Clark, then the lower register, then you can play with one more of these fresh reeds. But then, be wise to change the reed so it doesn't get too strenuous, of course.
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure.
Great one. Next one, maybe Jacek, you have something?
I want to ask about position of tongue in last octave.
Position of tongue in the last octave. Well, your last octave and Christian's last octave could be different things. So, which register are you talking about?
From C1 to C2,
Yeah. Is it general for the attack of the note or for the sound?
Sound.
Yeah. So the thing is, of course, like I showed a little bit earlier for the Poznan people, if you blow cold air and you change to warm air, your Adam's apple really drops. Like that, you get a completely different palmy voice, and that's great for sound. So if you can get the tongue there, down, and automatically you have a very round, big resonance room on the inside of the mouth, which is very, very efficient for sound. Mind you, of course, for the tenor register, the tendency, of course, is a certain amount of flatness. So you can only use this opening if your support is strong enough and your side muscles are balanced in that sense. So in this sense, I would always say you would use the tenuto point tha, no matter where you are, but how far the tha goes depends a little bit on what you need to achieve in the register. Because of course, if you want to play a tendency like the beginning of second movement Mozart, and you go, it's going to sound like a stranded blue whale if you have, the maximum opening and your support isn't enough, and the embouchure on the sides isn't supporting that big chamber. So the tongue position is, you always have to link it to what is the resonance I want to get here. Because of course, if this is the reed and the tongue goes there, you will have no matter what you do. You can be as open as you want in the throat, but if the tongue stands too close to the reed, only that part will resonate. So in that sense, practice tenuto tongue to get it as far away as you can, and then slowly try to find some middle point and see what it actually does to your individual intonation, especially with your setup and reeds. So for me, the tenuto point stays from the lower register all the way to the top. I use that point all the time. Especially, it's very, very useful also for the, for middle range going up to tenor range. So I think what you have to find is the quality of the tenuto point comes from the exercise on the high Cs, and you play them as smooth as you can. And if there's no crack on the high C, that's a great point. Take that point with you down to the C, and then combine it with, okay, what's the dynamic you want to play? What's the pitch you want to play? That is the way to go, what you want to do with the tongue. Ha.
Thank you.
Great one. Next, let's see, maybe Kuba, you have something.
I want to ask about practicing with metronome. When practicing solo repertoire or orchestral excerpts.
Absolutely. I mean,
because
very important to practice with the metronome.
But how to use it?
Yeah, it's we have to train to listen to the metronome, and we have to train how to play without the metronome. So, because I mean, it doesn't matter how much you practice with the metronome if you go on stage and it hasn't had any purpose and you can't sort of activate your own metronome. So that's what's very good to do is the Clark exercise, but with big beats. That you do that. That you have very slow beats and you can play crescendo, decrescendo. The problem for wind players, very often the time changes when you're moving the air very fast or very slow. And then the sensation of time, okay, that means when you play loud, then you play fast, and when you play soft, you play slower. Everybody does that. It's really weird, but that's how it is. So we have to train a little bit like that, how to find that. So practice with the metronome, and then play extremely graphic with sounds over the beats, how you want to do that. But then you must be able to take the metronome away and find pulse in your body and find that and keep that if you want to do the excerpts. And then you have to have a frame. Very often I say to my students, at least 2 bars before the excerpt, you need to have the tempo set. Very often most comments in auditions are, yeah, tempo was weird, too fast, too slow. Okay, well, matter of taste, but at least one has to be consistent within the excerpt, or if it's a rhythmical excerpt, of course, like that. So in that sense, practice small segments with very precise with the beat, then make longer sequences with longer beats. That will really help.
Thank you.
Dziękuję.
Bravo, Polish.
Dziękuję.
Okay, so regarding Polish, someone who's really good at that, Arek, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. As we know, maintaining high air pressure and strength of your chops is crucial in producing good sound. Do you have any exercises that you would recommend to practice on your embouchure as well as strength of your stomach muscles without the bassoon?
I tried actually on an overseas flight once to do the trick with a pencil and just training the chops like that. It didn't really work, and I didn't get any drinks on the plane because I had a pencil in my face all the time. So it was kind of a waste. But no, it's hard to say. I mean, there's been some products, for training, strengthening muscles and stuff like that. The problem is, well, if you get a lot of bulk, you lose a lot of flexibility. And that's a little bit the thing. I mean, long notes going back and forth, moving sound between the sectors, that is what one needs. One can train a little bit of articulation and double tongue on the reed exercises, and you can train a little bit the chops if you're in the car, commuting to work or something. Don't do it in the train. People don't like it. But it's you can do some of the motions, but the problem is we do need to play to find that sensation, I find, and that's why maybe the talk about the orchestra also is, then it happens automatically. Orchestra shape is something that all orchestra musicians know and require somehow. So to make it stronger, the only thing that you can do, which isn't really sort of written in the drills in that sense, is actually playing chromatics, crescendo, decrescendo, and then staying on the reed and just breathing through the notes. The whole register. Of course, that's going to burn terribly, but the next day it's already a little bit better, as long as you combine it with a flex exercise later in the day. Because we all know the feeling of going to the gym, well, at least these days, you lift and you don't stretch, then that's terrible. So, I mean, it's a little bit the same. If you want to build muscles and be stronger in the embouchure, make sure you flex it out later and do, so you get the blood back, the circulation back a little bit.
Great, lovely. Isa, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I hope you can hear me well.
Yep.
My question is, how do I bring my playing to another level? Because sometimes I feel that I've reached the top of my abilities in terms of fingers or my tongue. So should I do same exercises every day and increase the tempo? Should I mix the exercises? Is it even possible to widen those borders? Or maybe it's a thing of confidence, or maybe I should just close my eyes, play as fast as I can and hope for the best. Is it even possible to
what a fun question, Isabel. That's a great question. No, I'll tell you my little secret, or how do I approach these things, yeah, obviously you can tell I've been practicing my system for all the time. I still do, and I'm quite the drill junkie in that sense. Not a bad thing to be, I don't think. But how to move it from one level to the other, I think that is a much more creative issue than a technical issue. And what it can be really interesting to do is actually to say, okay, you make a mind game and say, okay, this is the excerpt, You have Marriage of Figaro. And what I love to do is to, make these rooms. And then you make the Mozart room. You make your own imaginary Figaro room, and what's on the walls, what's on the carpet, what's in the carafe, How do I get in the mood? How do I make this excerpt as Mozarty as possible? And that's a really fun thing to do. And I mean, people's rooms are different. People decorate in different ways. And it's very important that you sort of personalize the way you want to play Mozart things or that particular excerpt. What are the characters in the opera? Are they present? Who's playing? What's going on? And that takes your own brain to another level with that. What also can be very, very useful for playing these things is then, pick up four characters, just like Carl Nielsen does in his Second Symphony, his four friends, and one is this, one is that, and the other. And then you have the choleric colleague, So of course he will play much super soft and super loud and hysteric and and then you have like the really laid back Danish guy who doesn't really want to practice. And I do little. I mean, slowest wedding ever. Yeah. So if you can change your perspective from different characters, who's the overachiever? Oh, look how fast I can play, and all these things. It just gives you a different way. So then what you're having is like extreme interpretations in every corner. And then you put them into a really nice soup bowl, and you cook a fondue, and then you put it on a piece of bread and you eat it. And in that sense, you have so much more information, so much more extreme directions from that thing you practice so many times. And that might give you the effect that, like I have to do every time I teach Mozart concerto, I have to reopen that bottle of champagne. I cannot let a student that comes and plays that piece for me have the bottle from yesterday that the cork has been open and it's all sour and there's no bubble in it, because that's not my job. Yeah. So the perspective goes both ways. It goes for the student. It also goes for the teacher. You seek inspiration. Well, not always in the bottle, mind you. But that's, in this sense, you should be able to, open the mind and really go into different kind of characters like that. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's very often, theater people, they train their characters in the extremities. They have to, or else it's just like their makeup, Theater makeup is much more in your face, overdone. If you see it up close, you meet one in the elevator, you get a heart attack. Yeah. But then on stage, makes perfect sense. So the next level is not up to technique. It's up to imagination and personalization. And you can play two notes and they can be Mahler. You can play two notes, and they can be Debussy, if you create enough background in your mind and to do that. Cool question.
Thank you.
That's a great one. And I think you even had more questions, Isa, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I do. If I may ask one more. You mentioned the thing about mental practice. I mean, I think that's what you talked about. So I guess you believe in that. So how can we work on this? And I've heard some crazy stories about people going on tube and putting noise canceling headphones, traveling whole day on one of the lines and just trying to learn the piece, and then they could play it. But how to actually achieve good results with mental practicing?
I think you have to be, yet again, quite structured with what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you want to achieve. And then, I mean, if it's, say there is a piece you have to learn, then you pick out things that you want to focus on. You focus, okay, what's the atmosphere? What's the direction? What's the build-up? What's the form that you want to achieve? And then, of course, the most important thing, how would you like to play this piece in the frame of that composer? Honoring the text of the composer, honoring and saying, but like I was saying to Hashem, one of the Turkish students in Mannheim the other day, saying, yeah, Partita Bach, you have to honor Bach. And if you practice it exceptionally well, you're able to play your own version in the respect of frame of Johann Sebastian Bach. What an honor, yeah? It should always be an honor playing his music in that sense. So if we can create, if you study it so well that you play it with sort of humbleness towards him or his mastery, and still are able to get it with your own signature, then we are listening to, you, Isabel, playing Bach in that sense. And I think that's what one really should try and achieve. So the mental practice has definite advantages, but you need to know what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Okay, next one, Karolina. Do you have something you want to ask?
Yes, I do have something. And many of us struggle now with the same situation. So there were quite some auditions which were coming up in May, but most of them were postponed, mostly to autumn. And what to do, what kind of approach to have in such a situation? Should we rather leave in case there was the repertoire already available, should we rather keep on going and be still focused on the audition, play parts, at least part of the repertoire every day until September, October, or rather put it aside and just focus on drills, just develop on other pieces, and then go back to the repertoire again, to Mozart, to all the excerpts later on when the audition is a bit closer?
Yeah, it's tricky. It depends a bit on your routine and stuff. But I mean, I think it's when one has time like this, you should definitely go and revisit as many of the standard excerpts as you can. A very, very classic way of doing it, you play it one time, fresh out of the box, then you play it really slow and controlled. No, excuse me, all the way around. You play it really slow, controlled, then you do one shot, audition shot, and then you play it really slow and controlled and put it back into the box. So basically just to have it sort of like a reflex technique that you practice this. What's really nice is also that some colleagues have made nice exercises, studies around the famous excerpts, and that can be a really good way of sort of alternating a little bit like that. But you're going to be making auditions anyway, so I mean, keep those things at the ready. And then maybe, like I said a bit to Isabel, maybe if you need to change perspective, then change the character that you want to be in it, and be more extreme or more sportif or more artsy and more artistic, or all these things. That can really help. The difficulty is the extreme monotone repetition that we have. But imagine what it's like to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. Thought about that, have you? How many times the same stuff? Good God. Yeah. So it's a bit the same thing. And that we have to, as teachers also invent and see, how can we get the best out of the situation? How can I move the student further within this lesson from A to B? Which is always, for me, if somebody asks me, what's the job of a teacher? I says, moving the person from A to B, wherever that is, within that amount of time you spend together. But there must be a distance traveled in some way. And it should go that way, and it shouldn't go B to A. So in that sense, it's very, very important. Keep them. It's like having some beautiful china in your cupboard. You don't pick it up every day, but once in a while you pick it up and you dust it off a little bit and say, oh, fine, still there. So that could be a thing.
Thank you. And regarding teaching, I have another question, which is maybe more related to teaching and to being also a musician, but also a parent. And there are probably some of the people who are stuck home with kids who are playing wind instruments, and not only wind. What to do in this kind of situation? Because it's hard to stay apart, stay away from the kid when you are just in a few square meters together and the kid is practicing. Should we take a role of a teacher in this case? And also another question regarding this. How, as a teacher, what kind of approach to have for the kids, especially the beginners? Should we lead them all the time and take care that they will not go away from the right path, or rather give the freedom to the kid and let them learn on their own mistakes?
Yeah, good questions. I mean, first question with, Alex, my son, he's 12 now. They had a wind band rehearsal on Zoom the other week, and he played the Norwegian national anthem for about 90 minutes. This is a Swedish place. So it was kind of, I think I have to get some wine from my neighbors. But, that's, leave them. And when they have other teachers, I just say hi to Alex's bassoon teacher online and let them do their thing. It's important. They have their own world. When you are teaching kids, it's not really my field at all. But I would just monitor the flame of interest that you can give them some interest, you can give them some information, but if you see the flame of interest or just the lust for anything diminishes too much, they have to explore a little bit on their own also. For kids, they have very, very short span of not mastering something. If I can't do this, that's the end of it. Yeah. So then sometimes it's actually better to let them, just get them 2 steps further before you let them take 1 step back. That would be really good. So, and the third question, I'm a little bit out of the loop teaching-wise now, so I don't remember. I do remember your name, Carolina, which is, already an improvement. So, what was the third question?
So the last what I was asking is, if you are teaching somebody, especially if it goes about beginners, would you rather let them to learn on their own mistakes, or would you rather keep them on the right path? I mean, for example, having somebody who is playing wind instrument, would you rather remind the person to always take a very deep breath, or rather let the person just play, just read the piece, and then do the work? Or I don't know. What is your approach?
I think it's just like, especially if you're working with younger people. I mean, it's pretty clear written in their forehead. What you can read people. You have to use your psychological skills a little bit like this with kids also quite a bit to see, is the person available for this kind of comment right now, or does the person just want to play? And finding that kind of balance, difficult, but I think that's practicing. That's us, an older teacher also with Musikhochschule students also. You try very specifically to, when do I need to talk about this difficult issue? When do we need to say this isn't enough? You need to progress more, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of psychology into it also. And it's the same for kids also, to see, okay, are they receptive about this now? Can we talk about this? Or does it kill the flame? Like I said, does it make them sort of, then it's too much information. They don't want to know what to do and they lose the enthusiasm. And that's, blowing out the flame is what one should be most worried about, I think. Let it burn. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we are getting closer to an end, which means maybe we will take a little look on some of the questions that have been asked in the live chat on Facebook. Let me start maybe with a question from Johan here. What do you think about these backing tracks and virtual collaboration videos that we often see on Facebook today?
I think it's a really lovely gesture to show that we actually love what we're doing. We love to play. We want to connect with people all across the world. The only issue I have with it is that we are doing this for free. And it also gives the impression for the world that, hey, we're doing this for free and you can have it the way it is. And of course, that's not the industry. It really isn't. And it's very important for people to be reminded, yes, we are doing this out of joy for what we're doing, but it's actually also our profession. It's also how we earn money. And we are actually, the days are gone when you play a concert and they say you can have coffee and cake. And I think the balance there has to be justified in the sense that, of course, sharing is caring, absolutely. But one should not forget that this is actually jobs. We have families, we have future plans, we have canceled gigs. Of course, I'm, as a German teacher, professor, is in a very, very special situation because it's the safety and security of the German system. So I find it fantastic that people do this, but I'm also a very, very strong advocate of help for freelancers and actually for people to understand they need help.
Absolutely, I think it's very important as well. Good day. Next one from Stephen Fuller. How would you approach working on technical passages, perhaps using special fingerings that might be needed in a piece, for example, the Jolivet concerto? Is this a part of the play segment? Do you include these fingerings in your basics or something like this?
Great question. Yeah, for sure. That's how to say, when you practice, especially drill system, you integrate other alternative fingerings into the technique. Especially for the flex exercise, then you would use like other fingerings for that. The real gung-ho people also practice their fake fingerings for the attacks. I think that's really great. You play ba, 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 fake fingering. Just to see what the resistance is, what the intonation is of these extra fingerings. I would definitely, include whatever fake fingering sounds a bit wrong. It's just, or alternate fingering sounds better. In that sense, the end result matters of this. And as we see very often in the orchestra, the aversion of using so-called fake fingerings or alternate fingerings, you want the best result. You really do. It's not about, not a sufficient technique. Playing a middle F sharp as a major third in 3-piece, if you really want to do that with an original finger, well, be my guest. But it's going to be very difficult to make it sort of blend in if the surroundings are extremely dark, like low horns or double basses, something like that. Okay, it can be hard to do. So I really want people to practice and integrate their alternate fake/fake fingerings into their technique. In Drills 2.0, it is very clearly stated what is a running technique fingering, what is the sound fingering, and what is the slur fingering. And that's why one has that big fat slab of all the fingerings there saying, okay, this fingering could come into this, but you also have your own things that you do. So a piece like Jolivet is such a colorful piece. And, then it would be even more fun to experiment and, shade it like that, maybe this, maybe that. So not using other fingerings is like cooking with salt and pepper, like this person's been doing for 2 weeks. But that's I think why limit the options? Why limit the colors for a painter? Why limit the sounds for a composer? No. Integrate it and practice it, but be familiar with it. Put it into the system. Put it into, so you know how the fingering reacts, especially response or intonation. Important. Great question.
Absolutely. So I think I'll take 3 more questions. There is one here from Eva, bassoonist in Gdansk. For the kids who start playing bassoon, would you recommend that you give a rather light reed prepared so they can easily play on this? Or would they play on more normal and heavier reeds? What are your thoughts on this?
It's very related answer to what Carolina says. It's important that kids feel they can make a sound and they can, they can play and they can get through the song. Their span of concentration and power is very limited, It's the same for my son when he plays. I just played it, and I said, "You played again? Why?" It's those kind of things. It's just how it is. So it's important that the setup isn't too taxing, and that one can slowly build it up a little bit over time. I think that will be fine. I mean, for kids, it's more making the noise and which it basically is in the beginning. But they need to get that feeling of that they're mastering this. If something poops them out, it's not going to be fun for them.
Yeah, very good points. Some more ones. How important is it for you to take a rest away from the instrument for some time? And if you do, how long would you say is appropriate?
A rest?
Meaning you don't practice?
No, I actually, to be honest, I enjoy practicing. I find it very important to stay in shape. I find it very therapeutic to sit down and spend some time with your instrument. It's also a good friend, Who has a friend that doesn't talk back? Well, the bassoon doesn't really talk back, so you can talk to it, play with it, have your opinions. And no, I find it very important to be very regular with these things. There's only one time a year where I don't really, I mean, in the summer holiday, I have two weeks without the instrument at least. But then I want to play again. I like it. Yeah, I really do. And then your fingers start itching.
But then when you have 2 weeks off the instrument, how long time would you normally need to get back in a presentable shape?
It takes 2 weeks at least. And, you don't want to play publicly within the first 2 weeks. At least I don't want to. But it's just, I don't feel comfortable in that way, really. And I think it's just important to make not only being able to play the instrument, but play in a way that people want to play with you. That's kind of important also. So routine-wise, once a year, a little bit. It's good. It's good to do. What I do want to emphasize, and before the Corona times, it was very important daily to do like a half hour or 20 minutes with noise cancelling headphones, just to have it as quiet as possible, just to let your ears rest a little bit, and also be more open with the ears to adjust when you play again afterwards.
Good one. It's really actually more and more questions popping up here now. So if you have the time for 2-3 more.
I do have the time. Yep, we can do some more.
Okay, goody. This is one I guess you have heard before. Are there any reed measurements you would like to share?
Well, I can tell you, Drills 3.0 will be reed making. And it's a very, very exciting project that that can materialize faster than thought because of the Corona things also. But we have our own shape that we use in Mannheim, based on Simeon Popov's reeds, great guy. We have tools that we use. The reeds are generally quite long. What's this? I mean, we cut them usually at 30, and then somewhat into 29 a little bit, but it's part of the process. If you really want the measurements from usually how my reeds are, I think it's a freebie on Play with the Pro videos about reeds, isn't it? I
think you share everything there.
Yeah. So just go into Play with the Pro and find that reeds video, but buy the Drills 3.0 when it comes, of course. But it will be quite exciting, a lot of information, and there will be a lot of research to it and a lot of experiments. What happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? If you need this, then try to do this, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, that'll be exciting to see. Yeah.
Very exciting news. I didn't know about that. Looking forward.
Well, Corona macht's möglich.
Okay, and then considering Corona and that we're having more time for ourselves and maybe less lessons, a person here asked, do you believe in self-recording and analyzing this as an effective method?
Yes, I do. I think but one has to balance it. I mean, the strictest teacher is yourself, and you have to balance a little bit the devil and the angel on the different shoulders. I mean, if the devil is only telling you all the things you do wrong, the motivation might suffer. And if you only listen to the angel saying this is great and you're not really believing in it, it's difficult. So usually a good way is to do the burger. It used to be the burger in the back day. So you say something positive to yourself, okay, that's nice. And then you say something that really needs to be adjusted. And then the third part of the bun is then, of course, how do you get that solved? And then you sort of move from the burger into problem solving, saying, okay, is it an academic issue? Is it a creative issue? And that's that pattern you can find in Drills 2.0 from the practicing part also, which is quite efficient, how to sort of structure what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you want to find.
Great. Okay, I think this is the last question for today. What is your approach to reducing the tension during practicing?
that depends where it is. Is it is it a throat issue that your throat is stiff? Is it arms? Is it? I mean, stretching in between is very important, but also just like I showed here, the temperature thing is super important. If you do a classic Metronome exercise, the T set sound, things are quite tense. But if you go and keep that tension and change the temperature from cold to warm, okay, then the resonance room is open. And the amount of tension we need to play is very, very susceptible to, dynamic level, register, all these things. And there's no point being tense anywhere else than where you need it. And that's a little bit also the body awareness. That's why it's nice to do some workout before practicing, that your body is kind of awake, and you're sort of you're with it. And I think that body awareness in that sense will also help you to find, okay, I'm tense there, I'm tense there. A very big thing for me, or in the Mannheim class, is also posture, that people have good postures, that we work on this, because, well, I mean, the musician's life is usually 30, 40 years. You need to be standing properly, sitting properly, and not put too much pressure in the wrong place, for sure.
Great one. So I think that's all the questions we have, both from Postman class and from Facebook Live.
Very nice. Are there any more from Facebook Live that we haven't answered?
We can take a quick look. Let me check.
It would be nice to give them the time of day if it's possible.
Of course. So guys, if you have anything, this is the time to ask.
There's one.
What is it? Carolina found one.
Yeah, there's a question. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question from Pedro Gonçalves. What is your opinion about improvisation on the bassoon?
It's very important. My goodness, of course. That's one of the most fun things to do. Once a little bit going. If you're doing your practicing and you're being so methodic and you're being so disciplined and drills and everything like that. I mean, what can be really fun is this when you land on the note and you feel I'm not really in the mood of playing that combination. Improvise on the note, make a song out of that note, or play a tune on that note that you like. Or this is actually something I'm working on right now, finding just that the reason why you're doing this. And then having a proper example from the either solo repertoire or the orchestra repertoire, you're playing this note because of this. That is such a different motivation. And then saying, okay, wow, and then you play a little bit of that, and then say, okay, fine, I do need to work on that note. I do need to work on that combination. So improvisation is letting your brain walk free and have some kind of harmonic structure if you want to. You don't need that. But improvise is just setting things free, loose it up. Great. And that's why also the strong importance for me. I want to know what the students are listening to, and what kind of music gets them going. Doesn't have to be Turan Galila every day. No, it's different. So I think it's a very, very important aspect of putting into your playing, for sure. Fun to do.
All right, you have something?
Yes, I do have something. Ole, you do mention drills 1 and drills 2.0. There might be some individuals online who are not very familiar with drills 2.0. Would you be able to say in few words what they are about and why one should get them?
Yeah, sure. Drills normal is a system that I made for myself from practicing, being in the orchestra, finding, okay, what is it that I need? And then, well, what I need is, to be in time, in tune, at the right time, right dynamic, these things. I need technique, I need control, but I also need to explain this to my students very often. So I made this, introduction. What about posture, about breathing, about tonguing, how I think about it. So that drills works like an encyclopedia a little bit about the basic techniques for, posture, breathing, tonguing, pressure. And then the exercises come, which is part of the drill system. Drill 1, drill 2, blah, 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 read exercise, flex exercise that you need to do. Drills 2.0 is really fat, but very important. It has the introduction, how to practice. It has a chapter about slurs. It has a chapter about trills. It has a very important chapter about behavior in orchestra and behavior on trials and lessons. This is incredibly important information because many of my students, thank God, I've been so fortunate to get jobs and trials. And part of the teacher's job is making them ready to not only win a job, but also keep a job and actually be happy in the job. So that is very important. Then there's a big segment of all the fingerings, the standard fingerings, but also fake fingerings, alternative fingerings, trill fingerings, all the trills that you need. Then we have copy scales for the system, and then a really nice exercise called Nbc Exercise, which is basically an intonation exercise for 2 bassoons. You train, NBC, an American TV show. But then you harmonize the other voice, and then you have major thirds, minor third, fifth, fourth, the whole shebang basically you need for orchestra duty intonation wise like that. So they are 2 individual things, but they work best in combo. And every bassoonist should have a library with fingerings. And we've made it with the drills 2.0 that there are, standard things for technique, standard things for sound, but there is also room to write your own variations into this. And then it should be like an encyclopedia that you can go and actually check and see like that. So they can be purchased from my webpage, www.olekristiandahl.net/store. And if you're in the US or in Canada or South America, Forest Music in California has them. They're being incredibly nice. We've had some very interesting buyers lately, a famous American bassoonist ordering, which is really nice, but hey, not saying any words. And if you're in Asia, you can buy them from Shindosan, our famous and lovely repairman in Tokyo. And he has quite a few of them there, and you can write him an email. If you need any information of where to purchase these things, you are very welcome to write me a message on Facebook.
Great. Thanks for clearing that up. Very good. Good with some advertisements. Another one that I think is important that I see here now is how do you manage your reeds with humidity changes?
Yeah, good question. And that is, if you travel as much as I do, it is a nuisance beyond belief sometimes. But what is very interesting with the pop-up style reed is the way they are constructed. They are very, actually quite, they're so rugged and stable that they have very little change between the temperature things. And that's also one of the reasons why I like that system so much. They don't change very much. So once you get them off the plateau, you can really rely on them. When I travel now, I don't even bring a knife because, well, air regulations when planes were happening still. But it's also that I would rather have a big variation of reeds in my reed box and find, okay, this suits this climate right now, this suits this climate right now. But then I know, because of the way the style of the reed is made like that, the construction is so solid that, okay, if it works now, it will also work tomorrow. It won't change that much. And that's very important for me, actually. So that's also drill 3.0 issue, that there will be a bit of a map where different kinds of reeds will work differently. It's a bit of a thing, but coastal climate, inner climate, if you play Mexico City versus Bangkok, it's going to be very different. And it is a big thing for people who travel a lot. It's a big thing for students doing auditions. If you're sitting tight in your job and you're not moving, okay, it's a little bit of a different story, but there isn't so much information out there what actually happens. And that's also one thing that will be very interesting to put into drills 3.0.
Absolutely. And I guess also a little bit the thickness of the reed as well, how fragile it is.
Absolutely, and that's yet again okay. The reeds are beefy, but they're not impossible in that sense at all. I mean, they're stable, and they're not heavy on the lips, but you do need to blow quite a bit. But that's what we're in that business. So
yes, and another one here is when you're playing for a big sound, do you think more vocally of an O or more like A, or do you have any? Yeah, your thoughts on the vocals when you're playing different registers.
I try to keep it as open as possible all the time. I really do. So I mean, that's again here. If you go, you can actually have that opening as big and as resonant as you can. I narrow in on the sides for different registers, but I really want to have the vocal as open and as round as possible. Also because of intonation issues. It's, you know, very, if you change the vocal too much between the intervals, I find too many accents within the intervals, especially if you play in alternating too much of the vocals in there. It would just sound, for me, it doesn't sound sustained enough. Whereas I would blow and have it as open as I can, and then narrow in on the sides what I need for the register change like that. And I think then there is a much more sort of consequent vocal color that goes through the register. And that's a little bit what I wanted. You know, we spoke about the c'est la mode. What is, you know, the fluency between the registers and stuff like that. Changing vocals and stuff like that, yeah, it's useful for sure. But the main sound, the ground sound, should be as open and as free as possible. It's it makes the sound easier to integrate with other instruments. It makes it much easier for people to integrate with you. That's a very sort of common thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there is one here that I also think is important is, do you have any exercise, either mental exercise or any routine you're going through to get into the zone before a very big and important concert?
Yeah, sure. I think everybody, every musician has that. There's like a mental thing. And for me, it's very important, you know, you're on stage, you've taken, usually immediately after the tuning notes, it's very important for me to just, you know, to set it free. You think, okay, I practiced, I've done my drills, I've done the rehearsals, and set it free. What happens, happens. Be in the music and don't hold back, and actually allow yourself to go into the zone of me without a safety net. That is incredibly important.
Great. Maybe to round it all off, maybe you have any recommendations for all of us, either some music to listen to or some bassoonists to check out or something like this while we are bored at home during these days?
Well, I could give you, I think one should listen to other instruments. I think you should listen to Ivry Gitlis, old wonderful Israeli violinist playing Saint-Saëns Introduction and Rondo Capriccioso. It's so far from perfect, but it's so perfect in the same time. Just have a listen. It's wonderful. So other things, keep exploring. Open up the valves. Listen to music that you don't know, and go through it. I mean, that's make a list of it. We have a lovely list in Mannheim, things that I think are important that you really should know in your bachelor and what you really should know in your master's. And it's quite an extensive list. And I want people to know the music. I want them to have listened to it. I want them to have a feeling for it. If they like it or not, but at least they need to know the music. I find it's somewhat confusing that, you know, modern students don't listen to classical music repertoire.
Absolutely, I think it's right.
Yeah, weird. Why? So, I mean, that's would be a big motivation. I mean, in this time where we have limited time to practice very purposeful or very free if the time allows it, and then listen to as much music as you can.
Absolutely, great.
Okay.
So I think we're saying thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Pleasure.
And thank you also so much for everyone on Facebook for asking questions. Great stuff. And I will eventually now end the live stream.
Okie dokie.
So,
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.